Boom. It's official now.
Uh, don't worry, there's stuff I can edit out. I'm just
Yeah, no, get it all on. Uh,
getting getting a test going and all of that. So wait, your mom and dad were artists?
yeah, they're both in fact, in some ways I've modeled my life after the way they modeled theirs. And they were artists that did their own work at home. It was very passionate. Any free time was spent working on new paint. And my mom did these detailed drawings, like feathers and landscapes and stuff like that. And my dad kind of went through some different phases, but like abstract landscapes, both really inspired by nature, bold colors. But then my dad kind of evolved into like more black and white cloudscapes and stuff like that. But so that was, passion. And they made some money sometimes. They'd show in galleries and try and promote. My dad was definitely more aggressive doing that. Um, but then they were teachers. So they were teachers at local universities on Long Island. And so I think my mom taught like beginning drawing, and a few other things. And my dad was like everything under the book, like, anatomy, drawing, painting. Um, and ran like the campus galleries and shows and stuff like that, and always like was a big promoter of young artists and stuff like that. So they had this dual thing going on, where I could see like, oh, this is the day job, and sometimes they'd come home like stressed or whatever. So you got that end of the things, and then when time was right, they'd go into their studios and work for hours on their own stuff, and it was pretty cool to see them have two aspects of their lives, and yeah, it just kind of worked out that even though my art's very different than theirs, I have a day job that maybe is a little more creative than theirs, but the two worlds are different. And yeah, when I have downtime at home, I start doing my paintings and stuff like that, and try and show in galleries. And it's not my main source of income, but it every once in a while surprises me and gives me a little something. So um, yeah, I owe a lot to them. And they didn't push it. It was, the stuff, the supplies were always kind of around, obviously, because they were always using things. But and as a kid, I was creative, but more like on a building end of things. I like building stuff, maybe for like models, and uh, I played Dungeons and Dragons, so it was like landscapes that you could adventure through, and things like that. And then maybe my junior year in high school, I was doing all this crafty kind of stuff, but I was starting to think about what I wanted to do in my life. And, I was doing okay in school, working hard, but I was like looking at all the movie posters and animation stuff in my room. Like, well, duh, Joe, you do want to be an artist, and you gotta like dive into it. So, yeah, next thing I know, my parents were kind of giving me tutorials on what they would like to see in a portfolio. And so I started doing basically my mom's drawing class, but at home. And my dad had all sorts of like assignments. Um, and then I was doing some other like art stuff out of the house, like figure drawing and sculpting and things like that. And yeah, tried to take it a little more seriously. But I was kind of a late bloomer as far as the drawing and uh, you know, 2D art aspect of it all.
Right. Uh, so professionally, you're mostly into painting professionally, like background work and things like that.
Well, okay, so my career in animation, I started with Ralph Bakshi. And I
Right.
might as well just get to it there because animation, like my painting world is different. And if you look me up, you'll maybe see some examples of my like illustrative type painting world. Um, but the I think one of my stronger suits. Like the drawing has evolved over the years, but I was pretty good with color and making color decisions. Um, and when I brought my portfolio in to see Ralph Bakshi, I think he noticed that, and I think he also responded because he was asking a little bit about my backstory, and he really liked, I think, the fact that both my parents were artists too, because he's just a very passionate artist, and just I think he's just always now in the studio and creating stuff, and uh, so like he decided to give me a chance. And he was working on these shorts, I think I mentioned, with what eventually became Cartoon Network, but it was, I think, still Hanna-Barbera at the time. They were looking to kind of create a new generation of like animated shorts. Things had
Yeah.
been dry for a little bit, and the industry was looking for kind of a rebirth in the kind of silly shorts. And they had hired a bunch of different talent around to kind of pitch, they funded it, but pitch, an idea. And so I think out of that came like a Dexter's Laboratory and a Powerpuff Girls and maybe Johnny Bravo, things like that. But then Ralph had his project, which I think was called Melvin and Malcolm. And it was about this weird kind of Ralph Bakshi character who I think the first episode he kind of sees this girl he really likes, but um he doesn't, he's kind of a loser and he couldn't figure out how to like introduce himself, and he starts hearing this beautiful like jazz music, this guy playing saxophone or something, and he sees the girls going crazy for it, and he's like, oh man, if I could just do that, maybe I have a little confidence kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the the thing making the music think is like a little cockroach guy.
Yeah, Malcolm
It's
the
been like 30 years. I can't remember exactly, but
I remember the cartoon pretty vividly. It was about a clown who is unpopular with people, and he's about to commit suicide. Or his mom, oh wait, his mom becomes famous first, like she becomes a famous singer. Um, and he's about to commit suicide because he has like a sink or something tied to him, and he's gonna drop it
I
out of
remember none of this.
and the cockroach is named Malcolm, just like Malcolm the cockroach in Coonskin.
Okay.
He says, "Oh, I should play the oppressor a song," as he jumps to his doom, and that's when he begins to play, and Melvin hears him playing, and he take the one of the neighbor ladies has the hots for him after she hears the music, and
Okay.
the Melvin the clown, he jumps at the opportunity to claim it was him, and then him and Malcolm form a friendship based on that kind of. Ah man, I should have watched those before.
Oh man, it's funny because I never saw, I mean, I think I saw the final product once or twice, but when I was working on it, I don't know if it was just Ralph keeping things under wraps or like maybe it wasn't all thought out yet, but I would just get like a piece of paper, couple pieces of animation paper with like a crude cityscape and then like a hard animation registration line. And he would just say, oh, it's like nighttime in the city. Um, just make sure this line is accurate. But you can kind of do whatever you want in the other scenes, in the other areas. And, like I didn't have any animation background experience. So it was just me kind of going off on a limb, like, okay, cityscape uh, and then, there were like color cards he needed where it was just like splashy color behind some animation. But I was often kind of in the dark and I would just do what I thought looked good and bring it in and hopefully and pretty much all the time it was like, oh yeah, it's great. Okay, next this you got this and that. But I was really learning I don't know. I was learning the process very disjointedly. Like I wouldn't see how my thing interacted with characters until much, much later. So, uh, probably not ideal, but It was, pre-internet, and he had Dave Compton, you mentioned, right? Doug Compton? Dave?
Yeah,
Doug?
Doug Compton.
Doug Compton, I think he might have been like in Jersey, so like I only met him once or twice. Everybody's kind of spread out. It was like working remotely. So it wasn't like we could walk to the next office and say like, "Oh, Doug, that's what this is for. Get it?" It was just, and Doug could only meet on certain days, and then I'd go on certain days with this other background painter, and yeah, so it was disjointed, but they pulled it all together.
Where were
Uh,
you? Uh, where were you living at the time that you were working on back? They're called Bakshi's Zootoons. I'm not sure what I forgot where Doug said the name comes from. But where were you working at the time?
so I grew up on Long Island on the East Coast, and um, when went to Syracuse to get like an illustration degree. And out of school, I was kind of pounding the pavement in New York City, hitting magazines and book publishers and comic companies, dropping off portfolios. And I just happened to get Ralph's name from pretty much my best friend's brother was also a super talented artist. And he was thinking about it. I don't know how he got Ralph's name, but he's like, "Hey, I know you're a Ralph fan too. If you want, I heard he's maybe looking for some people." Uh, and so, I just picked up my portfolio with I think another rejection note, like, "Yeah, sorry, but no." And my dad, who knew the city really well, driving around, thought, let's just drop it off at this Ralph guy's place. I'll wait, and you just run up there and see what you can do. So yeah, he pulled up and ran into this. I ran into this little apartment building, and yeah, Ralph had like a two-room studio kind of office space, and it was awesome. Like it didn't look like an animator's space. It looked like a painter's space, like lots of paint and paintings on the wall. But then yeah, he had me come in and lay out my portfolio, and he was flipping through uh and then asking questions like, so what's your background? And yeah, so it all kind of happened that way. So it was relatively close. He was in the city in uh what do they call it? Maybe like Soho, but there was another name for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where I met.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out because you came in a pretty interesting time in Ralph's career because this is when he was on the brink of his second retirement. Uh, he was originally going to retire after Fire and Ice, but he got back into the cartoon business again when he did the Rolling Stones video, Harlem Shuffle.
Ah, nice.
And that's when he got like that. You're familiar with all the Spumco guys, right? Like John Cristoforetti.
Yeah, he knew them pretty well too, right?
Yeah, that's when that was like the when he hired them to really let loose on Harlem Shuffle before they went on to Mighty Mouse. And then Mighty Mouse ended, and then he did Christmas in Tattertown, which was
I've never
supposed
even
to
seen
be
that. Is that a feature?
no, it's actually a Christmas special that aired on Nickelodeon. It was supposed to be a TV show, but for some
Oh,
reason it never went into production further than the Christmas episode. But it aired on Nickelodeon in the late 80s. And if it had went on to become a TV show, it would have been Nickelodeon's first original animated series.
interesting.
Yeah, he also did a pilot for I think NBC called Houndtown, which was more of like a prime time sitcom that was just roughly I don't know how many months before The Simpsons premiered.
Hmm.
So he almost beat The Simpsons as being
Oh man.
yeah, it's like with a primetime cartoon, but it's not a Houndtown isn't really a short that he's proud of. I think it got when it first got uncovered like somewhere between 2004 and 6 it was uploaded to his website by a guy who was really good at digging up old Bakshi stuff. And this is kind of still the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
So there was no YouTube yet, and finding all this stuff took a lot of work. But
Yeah.
I think when it finally got uploaded to Ralph's site, I think he said something along the lines of, I thought we buried that piece of shit.
That sounds like Ralph. Yeah. The dude was blunt
Yeah.
and yeah, and emotional at times.
Yeah. I don't know too many Ralph stories about. I know he's very blunt and very emotional or passionate, if you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of a hodgepodge of I don't know. There was some speculation whether he was like maybe a little bipolar too, because like 1 minute he's like, "You're doing great, you're doing great," uh, and then the next moment he's like, "What the fuck is this?" You never knew exactly what you were gonna get. I've always been like, I think I get some of my angst out in my art, but I've always been kind of like a people pleasing, like I don't want to get in trouble. I just want to do the job. I want to do the job well. And so he never had any big problems with me, but I saw him blow up at some other people and I was like thankful that it wasn't me. Like we used to, because, such a hodgepodge, people were coming from all over the place. He would just say, he would give me some drawings and say, okay, let's meet in a week at, it was either his studio or more often than not, it was at this little coffee shop in the city that was, I think, across from his therapist's office. And, we would just, he would buy us lunch and then, we just exchange. Like I'd give him the paintings, he'd give me the next week's work. And this one week, this other older artist, who's super talented too, Kim Mishko, uh, he didn't have the work. He just wasn't prepared. And, I think I tried to explain this in the car. Like I was still at home, didn't have any rent, not paying bills. Uh, and this was my only job, so I could focus on this all week, get it done. This guy was juggling a bunch of different stuff. He was trying to teach, he was doing other, it just didn't work out that week for him to get the work done. And Ralph lit into this guy in the middle of his coffee shop, and I'm eating my little grilled cheese and hot chocolate. It's like, oh man. It was comical once I was safe and out of there, but holy crap, this Kim Mishko guy was like, his neck was sinking into his shirt, like, oh God. And Ralph's big. Have you ever seen him in person or met him?
Never met him in person, but I've seen plenty of footage of him, and he's a very massive guy.
He's a big dude, like 6'4". Like his voice is, if you just heard the voice, you wouldn't know that. But yeah, I think he's like 6'2", 6'4", and big, like solid dude. So,
Oh yeah, he's his voice is very recognizable. Once you become
mm,
a fan of him, you can hear it right away. He's got this very nicely voice, like kind of like that.
yeah, maybe a little lisp in there too. Joe, you're doing great work. I think I gave you a couple new pieces this week, and let's see what you do with it. Uh,
that was
but
that was like
I was always thankful to that guy though, because he took a chance with me, and like after he kind of eventually wanted to get out of the city, and he and his wife had this place in South Salem, New York, which was right. It was like upstate, but on the border of Connecticut, and kind of out in the country. It was beautiful up there, and like this was his dream spot at the time. Like I'm building a studio right now. I'm kind of working out of the basement, but I want people to start coming up there, and we'll have a nice studio space, and we'll be out in the woods. It'll be beautiful. Um, so the second half of my time with New York-based Ralph was driving up to or taking the train up to uh, upstate New York, and you know, his wife would have like coffee and cookies and stuff ready for us, and we'd go downstairs, and oh man, like your head would have blown up. Like he just had flat files all over this little small basement. And he would say, yo, you want to see something cool? Because I'd often talk about like how much I loved wizards and, the cool world backgrounds and all this stuff. He's like, oh, check this out. And he would just open a flat file and it would be all of, is it Barry Jackson's, like paintings from Cool World, like those curvy buildings
Yeah, that's
with
Barry
faces,
Jackson.
like the actual, art. And I was like, holy crap. And then he pulled out the original Wizards pitch. And I was like, what? It was, I mean, very rinky dink, but he had these Mike Plug drawings that were beautiful, but then they were kind of cut out and mounted on like construction paper.
Yeah.
And then it said like Wizards. And I mean, the art was awesome, but the presentation was like, I don't know. But he's like, yeah, this is how we got Wizards pitched. And yeah, oh man, he would pull out these nooks and crannies, uh, all these amazing little nuggets. I was like, oh man, Ralph, this is so cool. I never had the courage to say like, how much? How much for one of these? I don't think he started with it anyway, but and I didn't have any money. So anyway, uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
then we started, yeah, working out of his place up there, and that was a little better because we would do like multiple days in a row with multiple people in his new studio space. So there was a little bit of atmosphere and camaraderie, and then you could start to see the spicy city stuff coming in. Like Doug would have delivered a bunch of stuff, and then I ended up, and I wonder where they are now, but doing like color comps, just marker color comps on a bunch of Doug's Spicy City, like copies of them, uh, to help the presentation pitch. Um, so, we were kind of finishing up Melvin Malcolm and then starting to develop and create art for this Spicy City pitch. And yeah, that was exciting because you could tell he was excited about this HBO pitch. And yeah, ended up happening. So,
Yeah, he was so I guess his studio was in his house and another part of it in the city. So he was pretty much relocated to New York City at this point, huh?
yeah, I mean, his story was, I mean, when it was the Spicy City was sold, he's like, Joe, Vox, he'd call me Vox. I'm not going back to LA. I've done that. I'm done with it. But I will give you a good recommendation. He was kind of done with Hollywood, I think, at that point. And honestly, I thought they were gonna stay in that place in New York forever, but now they're in New Mexico, so I'm not sure at what point they were like, we needed warmer weather or something. But um, yeah, I think he's been in New Mexico for at least 20 years now, maybe, or 15.
Yeah, I think right around when he was getting active on his website, he had like a message board there. That was pretty much when they had, I guess, just settled into New Mexico. Uh, yeah, I'm kind of, that's interesting because I guess, so Ralph pretty much left LA after, oh, so wait, between Cool World and uh, Malcolm and Melvin, he actually did directed a Dr. Seuss special.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, the Butter Battle book. Um, so he directed an adaptation of that, and that aired on TNT. So he was, yeah, that's kind of like not a very highly, I mean, like that's a period in Ralph's career that isn't talked about. Like, I mean, a lot of people talk about Mighty Mouse and Cool World, but like
Yeah.
the little things in between and then after, like not a whole lot is said about it in terms of history, like the Butter Battle book. How the only story about the Butter Battle book that I know of is was I think it was a guy who used to work on Ren and Stimpy named Chris Riccardi. I think
Oh, yeah.
he was working on that special for Ralph, and he saw like a car like cruise out of there, like angrily drive out of there, and he asked who that was, and somebody told him, oh, that was Ted Giesel. Ralph just fired him. That's the only
Yeah.
that's the only Butter Battle Book story I know.
Angry employees leaving. Hey, this reminds me. I did, now that I've established myself a little bit, keep talking. I got something that's kind of cool. Where the studio kind of looks like Ralph's. A mess. I haven't even unsheathed it. All right, I'm putting video back on for a second. So
Okay.
yeah, I think his daughter started helping to uh you know, market and sell some of his art. And yeah, I was just always so thankful. So I bought a Ralph drawing he had done, just, for himself. It's kind of a Wizard of Oz type thing. But
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, a couple years ago, I was like, I gotta, just as a thank you, kind of like,
That's a pure Bakshi drawing too. That's what's so
yep, it's
cool.
all him.
Yeah.
His own, his cool characters and
Yeah. It's
it,
not Bakshi filtered through different artists working for him. It's his actual hand,
yeah,
ink and everything just pressed onto paper. That's awesome.
yeah. I was excited to get it and kind of as a little piece of my history and uh, his the book when that book came out, I was cracking up because um, I just did a few things for the guy, uh, but it turns out this guy John Gibson, who I think wrote and kind of co-wrote, or I don't know, if you put the book together,
Yeah, him and Chris McDonald co-authored it.
co-authored it. Yeah. So John, I don't know him really well, but he had like a gallery out here too, and I think I was in a couple group shows that they had, just with my personal work, and very friendly guy, and so we had like a slight relationship, and I get a email from him, just out of the blue, like nothing, it's not like we correspond or anything. And he's like, Joe, I am down here in New Mexico sifting through Ralph Bakshi's materials, and I found a bunch of art with the name Vaux on the back. Is that you? And I was like, holy crap, yes, that is me. So I think, yeah, that was maybe part of the reason he, put a few of my paintings in the book. I was like, yeah, that's so cool. I didn't know you were doing this. Um, so that was a happy little surprise. And then I went when the book first came out. Ralph came out to do like a signing. Might have been with John somewhere, and I went and got a book signed and uh, you know, chatted with Ralph a little bit, and so that was probably the last time I saw him, I think. Um,
So that's like the late 2000s.
yeah, it was a while ago. I mean, how old that book's like close to 20 years old now, maybe, or
Oh yeah, it's out of print too.
is it?
Yeah, I bought mine when I was in New York City about a little over 10 years ago.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a nice collection of his work, though. I always loved the fact also that like on Fire and Ice, James Gurney, who like as an illustrator guy, I was in love with in college and growing up.
Yeah,
Obviously Frank Frazetta, but James Gurney and Thomas Kincaid were doing the background paintings on I think Fire and Ice.
right.
And Thomas Kincaid, eventually becomes known for this like Master of Light, like cheesy holiday cards. I'm like, wow, so cool.
Yeah. What did Ralph? Oh man, that reminds me. I forgot what Ralph said when somebody asked him about Thomas Kincaid. Um, I have to look back on that one, but yeah, James Gurney and Thomas Kincaid are on that one. Like, and I think Barry Jackson and John Vita did Lord of the Rings, and then a lot of the background art in American Pop. I know there's a lot of Barry Jackson, but I think Marsha Adams, man, people accuse Ralph's movies of being cheaply made, but I have to say the one place he was never, ever cheap was on the backgrounds because man,
He goes for it, right? And he takes risks. That's what I think was attracted to as like just visually. It was so different and cool. Like I think we were talking a little bit about the clash of styles between where Dark Wolf lives and Wizards and like the fairies that Ian Miller's like
yeah,
ink lines with some watercolor was like, wow, what is this? This is so sweet.
yeah, him and yeah, Ian Miller does those really intense ink backgrounds that you see in Scorch. And then some of the more lovely watercolors that are like done in like the good lands with the fairies. That's
Yeah.
John Vita's watercolors and Ira Turek's inking. Um, yeah, well, John Vita, because I'm doing that Ralph Bakshi blog about his history and stuff. I'm eventually gonna do an entry on John Vita. That's gonna be fun to write.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, yeah, a lot of talented folks that guy worked with, I mean, including himself, but yeah, even like John Chris Felucci, I know he's got a lot of baggage with him with other things, but the dude could draw funny characters. Like he's just a wizard when it comes to that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'm still a John Kay fan.
yeah, like God. I just started I must have liked something on Instagram or something and I get a lot of like Ren and Stimpy posts coming up and so I kind of take a moment and watch them again and they're so stupid and silly. I love them. Just crazy
yeah,
drawings. Like,
he's he's a yeah. John Kay. He's a pretty funny guy. I don't he like his interviews and Ralph. I used to read interviews with him and Ralph a lot when I first started getting online. They were like the two people I read the most because I think they had like just the most compelling personalities, with Ralph, his background growing up in Brooklyn, John being kind of more of like uh, a Canadian, what was he, a Canadian suburban kid?
oh, is that where he's from? Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask. It seems
Yeah.
like in a lot of ways their personalities were very similar, and
Right.
maybe I think there was some tension eventually, but yeah, I got a feeling, very strong opinions, um, but super talented for sure.
Yeah, yeah. He was yeah, they were gonna John when John was working at Ralph's studio, they were actually gonna try to make a feature called Bobby's Girl. Had you ever read about that one?
Nah.
It was what it was supposed to be like what John described it at was going to be like a R-rated teen exploitation film. It was set in the 1950s. Ralph, he was I'd have to look back at what he used to say about it because I think he was a little inconsistent about what Bobby's Girl was going to be because I think
Mm.
he was like, yeah, it's going to be R-rated, and then later on he was like, something more like a John Hughes or Molly Ringwald kind of cartoon.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. It's
small,
probably tough. Like, those guys, you see a little bit of it. The game you have to play to get things made, like to get the money to make the stuff, uh, you kind of almost have to pitch one thing. But then if you have this vision of doing something a little darker and a little crazier, a lot of times the money will disappear if if you're pitching it that way. So,
yeah,
uh, it's just a tricky balance of, I don't know, to get things made is just amazing how they made any of those features back in the day, um, that weren't like Disney, like uh, just time consuming and tons of art and staff and I don't know to make sure you're on time and it's just amazing. And I think I don't know if you know maybe like the background of did Lord of the Rings end in a way that Ralph was happy with, or was it like I feel like the funds were maybe drying up in that too, and they had to cut some corners, and it's like, all right, I guess this is the end. Uh,
I all I know is Ralph always insisted that it was gonna be two. It was supposed to be one of two parts. Like he was going to do a second film to conclude it, but I'm not really sure what specifically
yeah,
went on in the back in the behind the scenes that kind of put that on the burner forever.
yeah, that thing. I mean,
He talked about making a sequel to Wizards as well. That was something he was interested in, and there was a point where it looked like he was pretty close to doing it because not in film, but on in a graphic novel.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and
that could have been cool.
yeah, I have no clue what happened to that because it seemed like it was pretty much a sure deal and everything, and uh I don't know. It just fizzled and then nothing else was said of it. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, I think of all his work, that's the one that had the most impact on me as like uh, artist guy. That was the one that I definitely responded to the most. Like I appreciated the darkness, the cartooniness, I loved everything about that one.
Oh yeah, it's great. Like I mean the dramatic rotoscoping he does in his next three films after Wizards. I mean, I like it. I like it. But there's just something about like the more cartoony art and animation mixed with those darker themes that I think gives it more of a punch and an impact than
I agree with you 100%. I think it's just yeah, that contrast of like, oh man, it's a kind of a dark tale, but you got these rubbery characters doing silly stuff too. That
oh yeah,
really
it's
made an
pure
impact on me.
pure cartooning with kind of that dark Brooklynite
Yeah,
attitude.
I wish, I mean, obviously it's pre-iPhone and pre-everything that's able to capture moments, but there were moments where I would be in his basement and he was working on like Melvin uh walking around and he was just flipping animation paper, sketching, drawing, and he's just showing me. He's like, this is what I do. Like, look at this, what do you think? And I wish, like I could, my memory's only so good, like I could see it again, just to watch him flip animation paper and sketch a little more. And it was just so cool.
What was what was like the in the city? What was his studio like in the city? If you could
Small. Like, real estate in that city is expensive. So he had basically, I guess what would have been like a two-room. I don't even think it was studio. I don't even think there was a bathroom in there. It was just like maybe a 15 or 16 by 16 space, a wall that separated, and then another 16 by 16 space. And so like he was sitting on the left or the right side with it, like a big desk and paints everywhere, and some of his personal paintings stacked around. And then the other side was like a big like cutting board and some other supplies and maybe some snacks and stuff like that. And not big. It wasn't a studio. It was just a place for him to paint and
yeah.
I think work on some ideas. And um, I guess maybe they were living in the city at the time, or maybe he was commuting in. I don't know. Um, if he at that stage lived upstate and was training in just to get out of the house, maybe that's possible. Because I mean, I think he was up in that upstate place for a while, but I don't know.
Huh.
But it was, yeah, small little place, like second floor maybe of old building. So
So it wasn't really like it wasn't like so much a formal animation studio. Like there weren't a bunch of people at desks, like just,
yeah, nah, it was just him. I think it was just like a personal space for him to do his paintings, but then like these animation projects were starting to develop, so he was kind of using that as his kind of base of operation for the moment, but it was just him.
Huh. That was pretty. He was man. I'm trying to figure out this timeline of Ralph because he's back in New York City now. You know, after doing his time in LA. Uh, so that's when he's doing these Zootoons for Cartoon Network.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, was he teaching at the School of Visual Arts at the time you were working for him or no?
That's possible. I don't know. Did he do that?
Yeah, he became a teacher at the School of Visual Arts for a while, and I know like
Uh,
I don't know much about his time as a teacher. But there was a story that I heard on a completely different podcast. Somebody was repeating, you know, hearsay about Ralph when he was a teacher there. They said, I don't know what it was, but he was steaming about something, and there was this Little Mermaid poster in the hallway. And for some reason, Ralph was steaming, and then he stopped right there in the middle of the hallway, looked at this poster, and then punched a hole through it, apparently.
that sounds like Ralph. Yeah. I mean, he was rough on the edges. There's no question. Like, if you were on his good side, you tried to stay that way. But yeah, he definitely did some things like as far as role modeling that I would be like, I clearly would not do that uh, to another person. So like, you know, I was able to separate a little of the rough edges from the um, you know, the art.
Yeah, separate the Ralph from the Ralph from
Yeah. It's
separate all these different Ralphs from one another and focus in on the Ralph that is the Ralph that who loves you.
yeah, it's giving me a gig and giving me a chance to do some stuff. So,
Ah man,
um,
it's do you love me? I don't know what where that comes from. That's like I remember on the Mighty Mouse DVD, like some of the artists, one of the artists who worked for him would be like saying things like, "Do you love me?" in like a Ralph voice. And when they did presentation art for like Ralph's Puppet Theater, it's him looking at a string puppet and asking it, "Do you love me?"
I can see like on the right day that cracking Ralph up. Uh, on another day, I can see him like throwing a punch at him. Depends on which guy you got.
um, did you ever see they John Kay and his other some of his other Spumco crew, they eventually did like the adult version of Ren and Stimpy, the adult party cartoon.
Mm.
And that is noteworthy for being Ralph's triumphant return to cable television in an episode called Fire Dogs 2. Did you ever see that
Oh,
one?
I didn't. Oh man.
I saw that when it aired on TNN, and it opens up with like live action segments of Ralph, and he's playing kind of like the Jackie Gleason character from The Honeymooners. Well, he's wearing a bathrobe, but it's like shot. I think it was shot on the Honeymooners set, and it's a live action scene, and it's an introduction to the cartoon that the sequel to Fire Dogs from the first Ren and Stimpy show. Uh,
Okay.
it's strange. It's strange, but it was interesting. That was actually the first time I saw Ralph, what he looked like in person, because that was a year before Wizards got a DVD, and that's the second time when I saw what Ralph looked like as a person,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
because I only knew Ralph by name because before I think I was 12 when Cool World aired on the Sci-Fi Channel. And Heavy Traffic used to air on like the Showtime networks, and I watched a little bit of Heavy Traffic, and I was like, what the hell is this? I don't know if I'm ready for
Exactly.
this. American Pop was airing on cable TV as well, and it was airing on like the Stars network channels. And I remember the scenes I remember that stuck out the most to me as a kid were the I forget the name of the song, but it's during the World War II segments. It's like dun 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 dun. They used to use it in like Chips Ahoy commercials.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's been so many years since I've seen those. Which did either of those have a scene where this like drug addict like is like injecting and going on like this weird, it's like a crappy apartment, and I just remember like needles and but maybe it's not one of those two.
There,
Uh
there is a guy who gets addicted to heroin in that movie, yeah, and it's
yeah,
like he
is that
like
Heavy Traffic or is that
that might be American Pop because there is a scene where he's in his really dingy apartment and he's trying to call up his connections to get a heroin because he needs heroin, and him and his girlfriend later on inject some right before it cuts to like Jimi Hendrix playing on stage.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
that whole
American.
sequence, like when I saw it, was just like, huh? Oh my. You like you'd never seen any of that in animation before.
Oh, yeah. Actually, come to think of it, my earliest memory of American Pop was seeing the trailer for it on. Me and my brother and my older brother were watching something else. Him and his friends, they used to rent movies and stuff, and
Hmm.
they would watch them all like up in the living room or a bedroom or something. And me, I was just a little kid, but they didn't mind me hanging around, and
Yeah.
the trailer for American Pop starts playing. And the thing that kind of stuck out for me was I remember like the preview saying it's R rated, and then it cuts to like the scenes, and I'm like a kid, like, wait, what? A cartoon that's R rated? How's that? How
Yeah.
does that work? And after the trailer was done playing, my brother he like turns to some of his friends. He's like, I wouldn't mind watching that, even though it's a cartoon.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I think ultimately that's what I love most about Ralph is that he was challenging uh the norms of like animated film, like it just because it's animated doesn't mean it has to be like princesses singing and happy stories. Like it was just he was, presenting another version in another way that I was attracted to. I was like, oh yeah, see? So like not all of it's like great storytelling necessarily, but interesting, like there's a lot of cool moments in all of his films. So um
Oh yeah. Um, Yeah, so this was all before he moved to New Mexico. I don't know when he decided, because you mentioned that he was just going to retire like after after a bit. Yeah, he was focused.
yeah, it seemed like upstate New York was his like happy place. Like he was really happy up there. And I don't know if it was to be closer because I think one of his sons maybe also got into animation and is maybe teaching at University of New Mexico or something like that. And he and his wife maybe decided, oh, we want to move closer. I don't know if their grandkids involved, maybe, but maybe it was one of those like we want to be closer to them, and so they left upstate. But yeah, he was really happy up there. It's out in the woods. Um, Much different than the city life I was used to seeing him in. Um, so, but I'm not sure when that move happened, but it must have been like maybe around the 2000s.
Yeah. Uh, Have you are you familiar with a guy named Chris Pranowski? He started a studio called
Yeah.
Titmouse.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you ever hear his story about working for Ralph Bakshi?
Whoa, I didn't know he did. No, that's awesome.
Uh, well, I say worked quotation marks. He like he the way Chris Pranowski told the story years ago was on the Adult Swim podcast, and he said Ralph he got in touch with Ralph, and Ralph hired him, and so he was like getting ready to go over to Ralph's studio because I think he was at the time MTV Animation was still open,
Okay.
and so this was in New York City. And when Pranosky arrived to Bakshi's studio, it was like empty. It was like the windows were open and they were blowing like these papers around that were on the floor. Like Bakshi had just hired him. And then when he showed up, Bakshi was like already gone. He had left town or something.
Okay, so that didn't last too long.
Oh man. But that was interesting because I didn't know too much about yeah, I didn't know Chris Panowski had an acquaintance, was acquainted with Ralph. That was the thing that
Yeah.
interesting.
I've never met him in person, but I've toured Titmouse a couple times, and that studio is awesome. And they're making great stuff. So like you can definitely see how maybe Ralph, you know, inspired that as a studio. You know, it's mostly adult kind of content, and the studio itself is very, very interesting, very cool. They have these, as you walk into the lobby, they have some cool artwork and stuff like that. But then they have two vans, like 70s style vans, but
Yeah.
painted. Because Chris is a huge D&D player,
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons. And so there's these like fantasy painted vans, but just cut in half basically on the side walls, and you can open the door of either van and get into there's like a small little room where one is like a cool area to play D&D and the other one's like a cool lounge to like drink in.
Nice.
And yeah, they have all these great I think it's a Mexican artist that does like kind of their take on like popular movie and popular culture movies. So there's like kind of wrestlers and stuff on a Jaws poster, but these big paintings all over the place that are awesome. And it's a cool studio.
Well, oh, here's a question I forgot to ask. So man, I wish I had gotten a picture of this out of Ralph's art book, but originally Spicy City was called Spicy Detective, and you did the colors on the presentation pitch that Doug Compton drew up.
Yeah.
Do you remember if there was a difference between Spicy Detective and Spicy City, or were they still like gearing for the same thing?
I think content-wise the same. It was always supposed to be kind of Blade Runner meets Ralph Bakshi, um, with this uh, you know, sexy host. What was her name? Raven or
Yeah, Raven.
um, kind of to lead you into a story, anthology style. But yeah, I think the content was always the same. And early on, like my buddy, the same. So my best friend, also a talented guy, but his older brother was the one that gave me Ralph's number. Um, Once I was working with Ralph, uh, and I knew about Spicy City or Spicy Detective, and they were trying to come up with some story ideas. My buddy and I or my friend, who was the brother, who's a talented writer, I was like, oh man, we should come up with like a script idea and pitch it to Ralph. We never got it together, but we were like pitching all these ideas for, season two,
Oh,
which
see,
never happened. But
was there actual plans for a second season of Spicy City?
I don't know. Like HBO was obviously a cool location for shows, and they had the Spawn series uh that was pretty successful, season one and two. Um I guess they did 3 and 4. Um, Spicy City, I don't know if it was partially Ralph or how they judged, success of a show for HBO, but whatever results they got, yeah, it didn't seem like Spicy City 2 was ever a discussion piece, but it might have been, just above my pay grade and I didn't hear.
Uh, well, for a show that um, supposedly got canceled, the last episode, the sixth episode actually feels pretty conclusive. Like that was the thing that surprised me when I first watched Spicy City years ago is I thought, well, this is going to be a show that's only six episodes and it's going to feel like it, ends like unexpectedly, but like sees the sixth episode is actually about the narrator herself, Raven, and about like viruses and like,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, it was, and the thing that surprised me. I was like, wow, this actually feels like it concluded. Like,
Yeah.
huh.
Maybe that was always the intent, like anthology style, but yeah, just one season's worth. That was a great experience for me because like I was hired as a background painter and they weren't ready to like when I moved out to LA, they weren't ready to start Spicy City yet. So they started me on Spawn and I was working on that a bunch. And then, Spicy City started and then, it morphed into that. But it was such a small studio and everybody was so great and friendly. Um, it, I was able to like pitch character design ideas and, car design ideas. It was a great opportunity for me to like kind of flex my ambitions and whatever. So I was able to, get some cool characters designed in there. And the main character designer, this Dave Warren, uh, I'm still friendly with. And he came over, I think from Pinky and the Brain or Pinky and the Brain happened after. I can't remember, but he was like had some Warner Brothers chops and definitely had that Ralph look to his natural drawing style. And yeah, it was just fun working with them and seeing, my doors open in other areas. Like yeah, Joe can do some color, but Joe was also able to do some character designs and yeah, pitch some other ideas. So it was a
So
nice cooperative environment.
did you ever catch Spicy City when it originally aired on HBO, or did you like see it
Oh
before?
yeah, when it first aired for sure. I just haven't seen it in years, like kind of almost since we did it.
Uh,
Uh, but yeah, no, we would have screenings, early on to watch clips of it, and then uh, yeah, I think we'd have some sort of like get together when the season wrapped or something. But um, yeah, pay close
I
to that one. I knew a little bit, that was also nice to see, because I was a little clueless working on the Melvin and Malcolm stuff, but I was very involved, like not very involved, but like knew what the script was about, knew, what this moment, so that kind of helped dictate the mood of a moment, background painting. The partner I work with was super talented too, that did backgrounds as well. But it helped to know what the character was going into to key a scene. So that was good for me to see. Like, oh, okay, this is a little more information that is helpful when you're making these things.
hmm. So geez, I'm trying to think what else was there. Yeah, it's back on those Malcolm and Melvin and Babe, he calls me. I used to watch like Cartoon Network all the time, and I watched like because they did the world premiere tunes, and those were later anthologized with the What a Cartoon show.
Hmm.
And I saw just about every one of those cartoon shorts, but somehow Bakshi's shorts, I missed them completely. I don't know how I missed them or like maybe they aired once, but I never saw them in like reruns or anything. It wasn't until years later on YouTube that I finally saw them.
Yeah, they were funny. I think I only saw one of the two, like trying to tune in. And so I don't know if maybe the studio was unhappy with it somehow, or I don't know. But yeah, I kind of the same boat here. I think I just saw one of them live, like on TV, but afterwards I was like, I wonder where that ended up.
Yeah. Did you ever get to meet Fred Seibert, the guy who was like programming that whole thing?
Yeah, I don't think I ever met Fred.
Uh,
I did work for I think it was his studio. Years later, like around 2001, the animation industry in LA kind of was drying up a little bit, and I ended up getting a job on, I think it was Cyber Studios, but they were doing Tuttenstein, which was like, it was actually kind of a cool show, but young like mummy doing shenanigans with this girl in New York City somewhere. But then these leapfrog videos, like educational leap, just whatever, pay the bill. Um, but I think that was it. Oh no, that might have been Fred Wolf. Different Fred. Never mind.
yeah.
Yeah, never mind.
Man, it was so do you remember much of anybody from the Malcolm and Melvin and Baby Calls Me crew at all?
Oh man, I Doug is the only guy that I really remember. I don't think there were too many other people, honestly. There were two women that were timers, sheet timers. Um, I think Doug and Ralph did most of the storyboarding, and then these two women were doing sheet timing. And I can't remember their names. Uh, and
Yeah,
then Kim Mishko, this other background painter, was also doing some of the backgrounds. But I think it was maybe like the six or seven of us making these things.
so you,
Um,
so you guys didn't really work in like a studio space. Most of you just did like your background and character art at home or something.
yeah, I think it was this kind of the same. Like Doug would, work from home and then either, drive up and meet Ralph and they'd talk about what was, you know, different meeting, like board pitch meeting. And then, Ralph would do the color meeting with us um, and then timers, I think the timers, one of them lived on Long Island, so I wish I could remember her name, but we would carpool occasionally up to the upstate New York place. But yeah, geez, I was young and I don't know, my memory sucks anyway.
I was I was gonna ask what was your experience as a young artist in New York City in the 90s?
I mean, it was tough. Like, I think it's tough no matter when you're attacking. If you're an artist, I was obviously passionate and, but to get noticed and noticed enough to actually get work, it's tricky. And I mean, this is most people, I guess, pounding the pavement, dropping portfolios off, lots of rejections. Um, I had a few successes, like with this Earthwatch magazine. I did some illustrations for them. I did one or two things for like the New York Times book review section, but like small spot illustration in the back. But it was tough. Like Ralph's offering was like the first consistent thing um, I got, and I'm super thankful because it led to this career I have. So um, it was where to go, when to go, and for me, like pre-emailing and pre websites and all that stuff, it was just walking here, walking up there. And I didn't trust my ability to get around on the subway, so I would just walk the streets and get lost and then eventually find my way. But it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't long before I was like, I don't think I can do this for my whole life. I'm like, this is just too much rejection and too much like, you know, I I think it would have evolved. You get a couple clients that are consistent and maybe an agent at some point, but I never got to that point. Um, and yeah, I've survived. But yeah, it was tough. I think my worst uh and most stressful experience were those New York Times gigs because I met with this guy Stephen Heller really early on like a Wednesday. And he said, give me the pitch. This is what we want. Give me four ideas by tomorrow. And because there's no easy way to get it there, like email, um, it meant, and he meant get it there tomorrow by like 8 a.m. So I had to get home, take the train home. It's like a walk, train ride, hour, get home around like 11 or 12, then muster up some ideas. And I was sketching on the train, trying to come up with some stuff, ink them, do some final passes, and then go to bed because I had to get up at like 4:35 to get on the train, to get back in the city, find my way to the Times again, and get and deliver them to him. And there was this one time where he didn't like anything I brought. And he's like, I'll give you one more chance. So I had to go home and do the same thing, repeat. It was just so terrible. I was like, oh. Can't you just say you don't want to work with me? I was like the idea of like back again, try some new ideas, and uh, so that I don't know, it was humbling, and I was like, yeah, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah. Besides, let's see, I'm trying to think what else was going on in animation in New York City because, well, LA is the hub for animation, but there was actually some animation jobs in New York City for a while in the 90s. It seemed like there was MTV Animation where
Yeah,
Chris Prynoski worked there before doing his doing or starting his own studio. Um,
I'm wondering like the Aeon Flux stuff, and what else did the MTV kind of feature here and there? Oh, Beavis and Butthead. Maybe some of that stuff was New York based.
Yeah, there was some of Beavis and Butthead was done in New York City. Actually, it's funny you bring up Beavis and Butthead because I was reading an obituary on Cartoon Brew for an animator named Doug Crane who passed away around 2020, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and so I guess he spent all of his career in New York City and he worked on Beavis and Butthead. And way before that, back in the late 60s, he worked for Ralph Bakshi on some of his earliest stuff, like cartoons he did for Paramount, like Marvin Diggs, Mini Squirts,
Huh.
um, and Ralph Bakshi's Spider-Man show.
Oh, sweet.
So somebody who worked on Beavis and Butthead had worked for Ralph before he even like made Fritz the Cat.
Ah, that's cool. And that was all in New York then? His whole career then? Or was like Ralph Spider-Man era, was that in LA or
That was New York City.
it was? Awesome.
Yeah, all his Ralph's entire animation career was in New York City up until Fritz the Cat. Fritz the a portion of Fritz the Cat was done in New York City, and he moved to L.A. Or Steve Krantz opened a shop in L.A. to get some talent for more talent for Fritz the Cat because they had done, the whole scene that takes place in Harlem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all done in New York City. That was the first part of the movie that was done. And so all the people who worked on the Harlem scene were all old guys from Terry Toons, Ralph's old studio, and
Yeah.
Fleischer and Famous studio back in the day. So guys like Nick Tafuri and James Tyre. And then when they moved to LA, that's when they got a lot of like some old Warner Brothers and some old Disney guys like Rick, like Dick Lundy, uh, Ted Bonnickson, I think's his name, Norm McCabe, guys like that, Virgil Ross, like Looney Tunes guys, and Dick Lundy
Yeah,
was the
geez.
Donald Duck director.
Huh. Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
Oh yeah.
What a career. Um,
A lot of interesting people he worked with.
hmm Um, yeah. No, I'm always thankful I crossed paths with that Ralph Bakshi guy.
Yeah, yeah. When I was looking through the credits for his Cartoon Network shorts, I saw another name. Larry Huber was a producer of all those world premiere tunes and stuff, and he's credited as producing on Malcolm and Melvin and Baby Calls Me. And like I just thought that was funny because Larry Huber was also an assistant animator on Coonskin and Hey Good Looking.
Hey, okay.
Yeah, that's somebody I wouldn't. That's somebody I'd like to get in touch with to see if he has any memories of. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, have you ever reached out to Ralph? I don't know how available he is, but I know he's still doing stuff out there. I see videos and him painting in his studio and
Uh, I think back when he had a message board on his website, I asked him a few questions here and there. Like there was one question I asked him. I asked him about if he had plans to do a movie version of this comic strip called Little Annie Fanny.
hmm.
You familiar with that?
Yeah, I think I am. Yeah, because he would talk about her a lot.
Oh, wait, Ralph would talk about her?
I think so. I remember him.
It was a comic strip that was published in Playboy. It was created by Harvey Kurtzman, the creator of Mad Magazine.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. The little Annie Fanny rings a bell. Um, and like sounds like it's right up Ralph's alley.
Well, anyway, that's one of my few interactions I had with him online was I asked him if he had planned to make a movie based on that, and he said no, no, he didn't. And he talked a little bit about Harvey Kurtzman, and he talked about Kurtzman's attic studio, which in some detail. And then years later, I read a book, a biography of Harvey Kurtzman by Bill Shelley, and sure enough, it goes into like so much details about Kurtzman's attic studio, which it's interesting that Ralph was the first person that told me about that.
That's cool.
Anyway, fast forward years later, and I'm collecting like resources, old articles and stuff about Ralph. And sure enough, one of the things that was always insisted was that they were trying to get the rights to Little Annie Fanny. So, but I don't know. That might have been Steve Krantz. That might have been more Steve Krantz's interest than Ralph's. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I seem to recall him mentioning that name. I mean, it's a funny name, so that's why kind of rings a bell a little bit. But
What
um,
was, do you have memories of, so there, Ralph is credited as a director on two of the Spicy City episodes. Do you remember the other directors? Ennio?
oh yeah, so we had Ennio Torzone, the Brazilian artist who I think is now at DreamWorks, and
Wow.
then John Kafka.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess it would have been Ralph did two, I think Ennio did two, and John did two. Does that sound
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's about it. What were they like as directors?
Oh
Do you
man,
remember?
super sweet. Like I still see them occasionally. That's the other cool thing about the HBO scene is uh you know a lot of the people I work with are super great, nice people. But that HBO crew really connected for some reason, and we still like every 2 years we'll try and do like a dinner get together and see how many people can show up. So Enyo usually shows up, John will show up. Super nice, super like I remember Enyo's drawings just blowing my mind. He was just young, and I don't know if you can track down any of his early animation pitches, but he, I think it was all just colored pencil, did this, I think it's called El Macho or something. I think it kind of got him the Spicy City gig, but luscious, beautiful, like animation and like the way he moved the camera, and it was just like jaw dropping, like, oh my God, this guy's from another planet. Good. And John also, John was a little older. than, Ennio and obviously myself, but he was wise to the business, had done tons of stuff already, and you know, had tons of great ideas and also drew really well. But just great, like kind of leaders to have in the office, like humble in their own way and supportive, and good folks to work with. Ennio's still doing stuff. John maybe is retired now, um, or maybe more producing than drawing and creating stuff. Ennio is over at DreamWorks. I think Big Boss Baby and things like that he's worked on, and uh, I got a feeling he's directed one of their big features at some point. But yeah, talented guy.
It's funny you mentioned Boss Baby. You know, Ralph's grandson does voice work on one of those movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I met his daughter, Victoria, and I didn't meet any of the sons, let alone grandsons. But that's cool that they're still staying in the industry in some way.
Yeah. One of Ralph's sons, Preston Bakshi, is credited with writing on Spicy City.
Yeah, I think he wrote maybe the pilot or the yeah, I remember that too. And I'm not sure if that's the one that is maybe also, is there an Eddie Bakshi?
Yeah, yeah. Eddie Bakshi. I think he's the I think he teaches animation in New Mexico. He
Okay, so that's the one I just saw a post. He got some sort of recognition there. Um, but yeah, I never met those guys. They weren't in New York, I don't think at the time, or if they were, I never saw them.
yeah, I know.
Victoria's about my age, so she was still at the house, like figuring out what she was gonna do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, super super nice family for sure.
Yeah, his daughter used to interact with us on the message board quite a bit. You know, if Ralph was busy doing some other stuff, she would, ask him a question for us, and then she'd tell us what his reply was usually. So
Yeah, I feel like she was kind of managing some of his like art sales and stuff like that as well.
yeah,
Um,
I think she manages the website pretty much. It's been like when I first emailed the website a long time ago when I got on the internet really for the first time consistently. She was the one who replied.
yeah,
Yeah, and
nice.
of course I asked her a question about Spicy City. Yeah,
Awesome.
I think my question was, what happened to it? Where'd it go?
Yeah, where did it go? Like, although, yeah, I think they do have it available like streaming now. I think you can see them. Like if you have Max or something, you can, type in Spicy City and it'll come up, so which is kind of cool. And the Spawn things too, which I haven't seen in years. So it was kind of a treat to see some of those things still have some potential to be seen.
You know, there's oh, what was Tim Maloney like? Tim Maloney, he's the supervisor of background painting.
Yeah, I mean, he was, like I was kind of his apprentice when I got hired. So uh, talented, uh, really talented guy. I can't remember where he was coming from, but he had worked in the industry for years, a lot of Warner Brothers stuff and Hanna-Barbera stuff, and um, yeah, it was cool working for him because he was willing to share his knowledge, and like it was fun to see him work because obviously I, you know, very green, didn't know what I was doing entirely, and so I learned a lot from him. I think he eventually, because he was always kind of a talent as far as voice acting, and you could tell he had some like charisma as far as like being on the camera and stuff. I think he switched gears altogether and started acting and trying to do some movie stuff. Uh,
Nice.
he was a funny guy.
Looking through the credits on Spicy City, it's on the very last episode There's a total of five storyboard artists that are credited, and one name really stood out for me, a guy named Marty Murphy.
Hmm. They might have had some freelance folks doing work as well because it was a really small studio. So I don't remember a Marty in-house.
Uh,
Um, I'm trying to think as far as board people. We had like a Tom Nelson, Mike Vosberg, uh,
Jennifer Yu,
oh, Jennifer. Man, she's incredible. And then, um, yeah, Ennio and John. I don't remember other board artists.
so you never met Marty Murphy then, huh?
Yeah, I don't think I have.
He's if it's this, it has to be the same Marty Murphy, but he's an interesting guy. He's the he well, like a lot of the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons, they have that specific look to them back in the 70s,
Hmm.
starting with Scooby-Doo, because I can't pronounce, I forget how to pronounce his name, Iowa Takamoto, the designer.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they all have that specific look, but there's two shows in Hanna-Barbera's 70s output that look really different from the rest. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home and Hong Kong Fooey look different. And that's because the character designs for them were done by Marty Murphy.
Ah, that's cool.
And yet he was actually a Playboy cartoonist. So you can find like cartoon, he was getting published in Playboy at the time. And he worked on the second Fritz the Cat movie, the one that Ralph didn't do, The Nine Lives of Fritz the Cat.
Okay.
So yeah, he's credited on that. And so when I saw his name, I was like, oh wow, Marty Murphy. Wow.
Well, I mean, it is kind of a small industry. So I wouldn't be surprised if like Eric Radomski, who is kind of our showrunner, and or Catherine Winder or John Kafka, probably worked with him and like, hey, Marty, you want to do some boards for Spicy City? Um, because it's not like there are that many people, especially at that time, doing it. So I could easily, especially with his track record working with Ralph, or even Ralph maybe reaching out and like saying, hey, I really want my guy Marty to work on some stuff. Um, Yeah, I don't know though. I don't remember him. So if he was freelance, he was probably just coming in occasionally and either, I just didn't know. Because we were all like kind of in separate little offices, like the color was in one area and
Right.
um but yeah, all those folks super super good folks.
Yeah. So did you guys never really got together much like or you guys were just too busy like to ever have get-togethers or anything like that?
For spicy?
Yeah.
No, we would. Like yeah, we'd try and socialize as much as we could. Like, do a crew meet dinner or something and but usually it was kind of impromptu, not necessarily totally sanctioned or organized by the company. So maybe the invites didn't go out to, you know, everyone. It was just kind of like, hey, it's a Friday night. Let's go out, get some stuff after work kind of thing. Um, the building we were in during that era was pretty funny too. It's, you know, yeah, t-shirt shorts guy myself. The office that we were in, there's these two buildings in Century City, which is right next to Beverly Hills, that
Yeah.
are like kind of twin towers. They're identical, kind of triangular in footprint, um, but massive. Look like corporate headquarters or something. And yes, there were a lot of law offices in there and casting director types. But then there was this animation floor for us, and so a lot of suits walking in, and then me, like who looked 10, and bunch of artists with like, rock and roll t-shirts and like ratty shorts and pink hair walking into this corporate building. The other highlight was because of where it was, you get a lot of talent come through. So like you'd see Tom Hanks and uh shit, Cindy Crawford,
Wow.
and a lot of interesting people. And this one guy who was arguably the most handsome of us, and he was in his 30s already, maybe, um, and had an eye for the ladies. His head would we'd be out there at lunch, eating in the courtyard and watching, and his head was constantly whipping back and forth like, oh my God, look at her, look at her. Oh, hey. And then Cindy Crawford walks past like, oh my. So it was funny. But then, like a group of us just to stretch our legs, we would like play hacky sack out in the front of the building with
Yeah.
just to get some exercise. And all these suits walking out, probably jealous. What are you guys doing here? But yeah, it was good spot.
Hmm. So pretty much you just like moved to Los Angeles after working for Ralph. What was the transition from New York to LA like?
It was tricky. I fortunately had one buddy who born and raised out here, and I spent 1 week sleeping on his couch looking for an apartment. Went home, uh, asked my now wife to if she would marry me, because I wanted to show some sort of commitment. She had never been to California.
Right.
We'd already dated for years. Uh, and we kind of just packed everything up and flew out. Like we didn't have much of anything. We were like, we'll just get stuff when we're there. Art supplies, I think we had a bunch of boxes shipped and stuff like that. But yeah, found this little apartment in West LA. That was the only thing I knew was like where I was going to be going to work. So I was like, I got to be kind of close to that because we didn't have a car initially, so I could at least walk or bus to get there. Um, yeah, it was tough initially, just getting settled and figuring out like where everything was going. But I was so excited because I had like this job, and she figured it out too. Like she ended up getting some good connections out here, and worked for some pop-up book publishers, and she was more of a designer illustrator at heart, and yeah, she had some good gigs too. Um, but yeah, initially it was scary.
Oh man. What were some of the things you worked on after moving to LA?
So like first gig was all the stuff at HBO. So Spawn, Spicy City. Um, they as the studio finished Spicy City and Spawn, was 6 episodes and 6 episode blocks as well. Boo Animation or HBO Animation was trying to drum up other things. So they were pitching and courting artists and stuff and comics and stuff. And around that time, Bette Midler was kind of a big deal, uh, especially with HBO. I don't know if she did specials and stuff. I wasn't like a huge fan or anything, but her husband had some sort of British uh, comic group called the Kipper Kids, and with Bette Midler signing, and that it was live action, but they would don these big chins and big noses, and it was just kind of something out of Ralph's world, just weird guys like kind of getting in women's business and whatnot. But with Bette signing a big deal with HBO, I think part of her contract stated that her husband would, or HBO would help develop maybe the Kipper Kids in some way, her husband's thing. And they only had maybe 3 or 4 that I'd seen short little moments with the live action Kipper Kids doing their thing. And none of our artists in the studio really wanted to work on it. And at
Yeah.
this point, I had expressed like I want to do some storyboarding and I want to do this and I want to do that. And they let me try, character designs on Spawn and storyboarding on Spawn and character designs on Spicy City as well as background painting. And they're like, well, why don't we let Joe try and do a Kipper Kid pitch for this guy? So they helped me, but I did all the character designs, I did all the storyboards, all the color for these like it was like a 2.5 minute short for the Kipper Kid guys, and I don't know, it's a bunch of nonsense, but they let me supervise it all, and they held my hand through it. I think knowing that it wasn't really going to be turned into anything, but it was just good experience. And so that was one thing. Um, and then after HBO, there was like kind of a shakeup, and my immediate bosses, who I loved at HBO, were kind of being forced out. And pretty soon, everybody who cared about those folks was just leaving. And um, my one friend went over to Sony and was working on the season one of the Dilbert show, the primetime show. And he asked me to come over and be his assistant director. So I went from HBO to Sony and worked on Dilbert for 2 seasons. And then after that, kind of continued with Sony doing like storyboards for like Stuart Little and maybe like a Men in Black episode here and there, and um, even some Dragon Tales, which is like a real young kid animated show. Just trying to survive. But this was the time where I was, like convinced that I want to be more of a storyboard artist than background painter now. Like I definitely want to go that route. And so yeah, just trying to get my legs. Like it was tough years because I wasn't great at it right out of the gate, and I definitely had to, you know, sweat and stress and uh, to survive amongst all this talent out here. So um, yeah, did a bit at Sony, and then things dried up a little bit in animation in general. And this is around 2001-ish. And I was forced to kind of look for other things. And my wife at the time was working for this pop-up book publisher that had just nailed the Harry Potter license. And I ended up illustrating 2 Harry Potter pop-up books, and that was a great gig for a bit. And this is pre-movies, like or the first movie I think maybe had come out, but the second movie was in production. So there wasn't a lot to look at. It was kind of these based on the original American release of the book covers. But then did some illustration on those, and then soon after that, I did a little of that Tuttenstein and Leapfrog things for like a year. And then then after that, I had a mini HBO reunion at Universal Studios. They were doing Um, so prior to the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie coming out, they wanted to do like a 30-minute Van Helsing intro, kind of based on the character that'll be in the movie. So they were doing that and like a Riddick animated release. And so a bunch of like John Kafka, Sharon Bridgman, a bunch of people that I'd worked with at HBO, Tim Brock, Lewis, were working on this Van Helsing thing. So I got around that and went back to color, did some color on that. And then Family Guy started soon after that, and I've been on that ever since.
When did you jump? When did you first join Family Guy, from season one or?
No, it was so season one, two, and three were kind of happening around my Dilbert years.
Right.
Um, and so 2004 is when I started on Family Guy. So when it was officially brought back for season four. So I've been on it, kind of working up the chain since 2004. But like storyboard revisions initially, and then storyboard artist, and then assistant director, and then director.
You ever meet Seth?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In fact, I mean, he's a great dude. I got f- he probably would remember me, but he's got a lot of people in his orbit now. And I haven't seen him in years. But like when we did our Family Guy Star Wars episodes, obviously a lot of Star Wars fans in there. Um, and the first one was done and we were talking about DVD packaging and stuff like that. And I'm like raising my hand because I paint a lot. Like we should do traditional paintings for the cover. And Seth's like, that's a good idea. We should do traditional stuff. And they were trying to come with like mini doc kind of stuff that they could add to the DVDs for extras and things like that.
Nice.
Um, and they also wanted to do, kind of like a mini art of Star Wars Family Guy book that would be included. But yeah, I ended up painting, the DVD covers for, you know, Blue Harvest and the first three. What was it? Something something Dark Side and
Yeah. And
it's a trap or whatever.
yeah, after
Um, so yeah, that was kind of fun to do. Um, he ended up like after we finished the Blue Harvest one and they wanted to show Fox obviously a relationship with George Lucas and also looking for content. Thought, oh, if Seth sat down with George and just had a discussion about, the influence George has had and Seth, although from a comedy world, uh, his respect and love for George and all that. So Lucasfilm invited Seth up, and they were going to bring a bunch of us up with him to kind of enjoy and do a screening. And so I got to tour Skywalker Ranch and meet George, and yeah, it just kind of blew my mind having that experience. And that was thanks to Seth and my producers. They could have picked other people, but they ended up picking me and a few other folks that worked a lot on that first one. So yeah, that was good. And then through the years, the writers, unique to like the Simpsons setup, the artists are all like in Burbank somewhere. The writers were on the Fox lot, which is like West LA. So there wasn't a lot of like cross-pollination and knowledge of each other as far as I could tell. The Family Guy operation, the writers were in the same office as the artists. So it was kind of cool. You get to know them, they get to know us, and we do like internal art shows. And a lot of those writers became aware of like the kind of art I do outside of Family Guy and would come to some of my gallery shows. Um, and there was this one morning, I was still an assistant director at this point, but one of the writer's assistants said, "Hey, Joe, are you coming to the table read today?" And I said, probably. I'm not. She's like, "You definitely got to come. There's something unique that you need to see." And so I'm sitting there waiting for the table read, and it's uh, a hurricane is coming up the coast, and Quahog's buckling down, and Brian's gonna experiment with some drugs that he stored for a rainy day. And in the script it says, Brian takes some of the drugs and falls into Joe Vox's painting world. And I was like, wait, what? So they had written, that this whole thing would be inspired by like my paintings. And I was like, what? So they let me just kind of write and direct 3 minutes of nonsense, like a nightmare for Brian to go. And that was huge. That was awesome. And after that, I think, based on that and a few other moments, Seth allowed my buddy and I to co-write 2 episodes of Family Guy, and that was fun. And yeah, I don't know. It's been, I'm so thankful for that. The 20 something years I've been there. Just nice folks and opportunities and um, one of the writers that left Family Guy kind of created slash developed Resident Alien. which is I don't know if you've seen any of that, but it's a really funny slash great show on Sci-Fi Channel.
Mm.
And in season two, this guy Chris reaches out and he's like, Joe, in season two, Resident Alien, which I hadn't seen at this point, he's like, our main character is going to discover like secret messages in art on like mural art, and we want to use your images, your paintings as kind of inspiration or use them on screen. Would you be interested? And I was like, hell yeah.
Nice.
So it turns out that you know, I get some screen time, art screen time in Resident Alien season two, which was awesome. So Family Guy family has continued to give me some love, which is good.
Yeah, I
But
saw. I was looking through your credits when I saw you credited on that sequence in Family Guy, and I was like, man, that sounds pretty cool. That was kind of when I fell off of watching Family Guy, and I was, what was I doing at the time? I know I was still in college, but I fell off of watching. I don't think I was really watching much of television. I mean, I watched movies and stuff, but I kind of fell off of like keeping up with a lot of things. So,
yeah, I mean that happens. Like I have ebbs and it's normal, but uh yeah, that was it stands out. It's unique. That 3 minutes of nightmares is definitely wacky and um it was just a sweet opportunity for sure.
oh yeah. I mean, Family Guy, it has a look that it sticks with for pretty much it has how do I say this? It has a visual look to it that it sticks with for quite a while, but once in a while they do like visual experiments and things like that. Like the one that really stood out for me when I actually kept up with it was they did a Disney parody
Oh yeah.
years before
Uh,
Disney bought Fox, of course, and it was very spot on.
that yeah, one of our director Greg Colton managed that one. That was another unique moment that we're proud of, I think.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Seth is he's an interesting guy. I mean, he's really become like so big. It's funny because, he got his he actually pitched to Cartoon Network as well with during the world premiere tunes with Larry and Steve. So he worked at Cartoon Network or
Yeah, I
Hanna-Barbera.
think he was like a Johnny Bravo guy for years, and definitely his first jobs were like more storyboarding and pitching, and you know, he has kind of art nerd background, but he also had this great singing voice and all these other ideas, and obviously a vocals. He's a vocal superstar. Like I
Oh
can't
yeah.
say it enough. Like table reads, when he would come, which he doesn't anymore. Uh, he would jump from Peter to Quagmire to Brian to Stewie, like conversationally and keep the character's attitude. And it was just amazing. He was basically reading to us and, you could just get lost in it. It was just very fun to listen to. Um, and, he's thoughtful. Like, he donates money to good causes and, like when his mom passed, I'm not sure how many years later this was, but I think there's a wing at the Australian Zoo that like Steve Irwin created, like that he donated a ton of money, and there's like I forget his mom's name, but McFarlane young marsupial or kangaroo area for them to explore. He's just, his heart's in the right place. Like, he also is one of the few creators slash producers that really insists on using studio musicians as opposed to like synth stuff. So like
Right.
most of his shows have full orchestras recording, uh, the soundtracks and theme songs and all that. And that's something you don't find as much anymore because you can kind of simulate a lot of that just in with synth stuff. So, yeah, no, he's a talent, that guy.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, I gained a lot of respect for him when I think last year because he and Martin Scorsese, the film director,
Hmm.
they got together and they're actually uh pitching in to help preserve old Fleischer cartoons. Like they're trying to preserve like old golden age animated movies that
Awesome.
are in dire need of preservation. And so I was like, well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm all for film preservation in general, but you know, animated films especially are if they're not like Disney, they're like highly neglected. Even Warner
yeah,
Brothers apparently
yeah,
neglects their Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies.
yeah. No, it's important. Otherwise, I mean, at a certain point, they'll just be gone, right?
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. We were talking about Seth MacFarlane on Johnny Bravo earlier. So before this interview, I was at a relative's house earlier today, and the Brady Bunch movie that came out in the 90s,
Hmm.
you know, the one where they meet like grunge rockers and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was on TV, and I was like watching a little bit of it because, you know, it's a movie I like quite a bit. And there's a scene where Greg Brady, he wants to become a rock star, and they ask him what's his rock star name, and he tells them like Johnny Bravo, and I'm like, wait, what?
It's funny. Yeah.
So I'm wondering
Been a
where,
while since I've seen that, but yeah, it was a funny movie.
yeah, that was I think that was a bit before Van Partible created that show, so I'm wondering where that name comes from now,
Yeah, I don't know.
or if it was just a coincidence. But I thought because I think Van Partible is like a fan of like 70s pop culture because I know he had like, or maybe that was his writers or something. Because I know he had like Donny Osmond on the show, and
Yeah. Well, that fits with that whole like fixing the hair. Hey, yo, whoa. You know, the attitude of Johnny was always too cool. Hipster kind of. Oh man. Good stuff. Hey,
it's, huh?
John, I might have to get some dinner here.
All
Getting
right.
hungry. If it's all right, if you wouldn't mind, I might call it.
Hey, man, what you provided me was great material, and you know, thanks for participating in this. You know, this whole project with trying to document like history on Ralph Bakshi has been fun, and I'm just getting started. So hopefully greater things will come, but your participation, man, highly appreciate it.
Not a problem, and I'm sorry, like we struck out on that first car ride scenario. That was wild, but uh the timing of it just cracked me up too. Like I had just put these dogs in the car and then you call and I'm like, oh boy, this is this is weird. Uh anyway, pleasure to talk to you and yeah, stay in touch.
Oh yeah, I'll stay in touch if I got further questions, man. Thanks.
Sounds good. John, talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
All right, take care.
See you, Joe.